So, welcome here today, Cathy McDonnell, who is a director of OD, Wellbeing and Culture at the University of Sussex, my old stomping ground, and is one of the participants of our Treating Trauma the Easy Way programme. And Cathy is here to talk about her experience of our programme. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to just say a few words, Cathy, about your background working in people and culture and well-being.
Thank you, Sarah. Really lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. So a little bit about me. Well, my background has been education pretty much for the vast majority of my life. Very driven by helping students and getting educated, seeing it change people's lives. And then I moved on to organisations because it's the staff that are teaching those students. So most of my roles have been about people, about development, about showing up as the best version of yourself, and of course, well-being is in that too, as is captured by my title that you just gave really well. So yes, everything from development, qualifications, to behaviour change, to business change, mentoring, coaching, well-being initiatives, you name it.
Wonderful. So you really understand human behavior and what it is that people are really looking for from organizations. And I'm just so grateful that you took part in our pilot of treating trauma the easy way, which I know is an approach which is so different to everything else that's out there on the market. So I'd love you to just say in your own words, Cathy, what your experience of that was.
Well, Sarah, I saw you many years ago and you taught me a method EFT that was hugely impactful. So when I heard about you delivering MAP, I was really intrigued to try it out and to be part of your trial. And I think what really stuck out for me was I was a little bit nervous to start because I was thinking, oh, this seems to be about trauma. But actually it wasn't like that at all. And you really put me at ease. And yeah, I actually came away feeling deeply rested after it.
And what had you been feeling? I know you said you were feeling a little bit nervous about maybe not knowing what to expect, but in terms of the issue that you brought with you, how had you been feeling before versus afterwards?
So I remember it turning up and there being something quite stressful happening at work. And as everyone knows in the public sector, crazy busy. So yes, I think I showed up being a bit ragged around the edges for sure. Yes, that's how I turned up. But in terms of how I felt afterwards, I mean, I'll be really honest with you, Sarah. I am struggling to remember it because what I remember is kind of coming in and out of hearing your voice, your lovely voice. Um, so I can't really comment other than it was like for something that is dealing with trauma and emotion, it was painless. I know that it was painless. So I definitely say to people, you don't need to worry about that at all. Um, and afterwards, I kind of felt like I'd had a really good sleep, like really energized, nourished sleep. Um, yeah, I was really blown away actually with how I felt, considering how I turned up.
Yeah, and I'd love you to say something about, it was a group environment. And as I said at the beginning, that whatever anybody's brought, I mean, there were some people that reached out to me afterwards because they just said, wow, like I've been carrying this for so long. Um, people that have experienced trauma in the form of bullying at work, have gone through sort of significant life changes and have been really feeling the weight of that. And to achieve such a significant shift in 45 minutes, they were literally kind of, as you say, blown away. And I love what you said about actually, it didn't feel necessarily like trauma. And it's that message that I'd love to also get across, that we sometimes have this idea of what we think trauma is, but simply if we are holding our body in the stress response, if we're holding emotion, if the nervous system is holding on to things, then that's going to compromise how we're showing up and how we're performing. So it isn't necessarily, as you experienced, about big T trauma, is it?
No, no, not at all. And I suppose if I was to say before that session how I would think about trauma, as what springs to mind is kind of years of therapy, and a lot of talking, and have to go through in detail different things that have caused that trauma. And it's not like that at all. And I felt it really fascinating that it's kind of dealing with the mental and physiological, but without me having to say anything about it.
Yeah. And it's certainly, that's the feedback that I've received, is how somebody can access a session like that. They don't need to speak, they don't need to have their camera on, they can be in this group environment, but for them, it still felt very personal. Even though there were other people there, it felt like a very personal experience. And I'd love your input on how you found that, whether you related to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because you offer up, people don't have to have their names on the screen, they can have their camera off. So there's privacy that comes with this as well. People can find their own space that they're comfortable in. They're not in a consulting room somewhere where perhaps they've had to travel to. So I think some guidance beforehand on finding a good spot for yourself. So maybe not in a busy office kind of thing. But when you're doing that kind of work online, gives people choices, but it's also it provides the privacy that they need as well for something like that.
Yeah. And I'd love your thoughts, given that you have that responsibility for well-being within the university. I know from my own HR background that EAP systems and schemes have been around for a really long time. And I love what you said, that actually the idea of treating trauma can make some people think of hours of therapy and having to rake over their past, doing an archaeological dig into everything. And actually, the opportunity to come and attend a live session, and an hour later, you're walking out feeling calm, feeling grounded, feeling safe in your body, feeling just like the weight of the world has been lifted off your shoulders. Like, what impact can you see that having on workplace well-being compared to some of these more historical ways of addressing well-being?
I think it's a really interesting question because, you talked about EAP, you got Op Health, that kind of thing, the kind of things that most companies buy into. Um, I mean, you can tell that I've been around the block a few times and they've always been on the agenda, no matter where I've worked. Feels really quite traditional, kind of like a traditional approach. Um, but I think they also have their limitations as well. So depending on what kind of contract you have, like usually it's limited to 6 sessions or something like that, which often isn't enough for somebody anyway. And also it's whether, I think of people at the university, and we've got people like on grade 3 contracts, graduates, right the way through to very senior people. It's what people can afford to do as well. Um, I think about that, but I also think in today's world, most of us are trying to forget about COVID now, aren't we? But but what it did do was kind of teach us that we didn't know all about the world that we thought we did. We didn't know as much as we thought we did, and actually we realized that our time is precious, and how we spend it is precious. And how that's translated for me is in an employee value proposition is what's required now is vastly different to what used to be. That kind of, employee employer transactional process of I pay you money and you do a job and then that's it, job done. It's very contractual, very transactional. And I think that kind of the change that we've experienced over the last few years, employees are looking for something different and they're looking for value, they're looking for purpose, they want to know the rationale and reasoning behind things, but they also want holistic well-being. And depending on what the nature of the company is, whether it's at software engineering or a university like I work in, it's about just-in-time help as well. So not being put on a waiting list. We've got an NHS mental health crisis, you know. And the other thing I'm really conscious of because of those changes is that work is no longer separate to our home life or our personal life. It's an extension of ourselves. We're a whole package. You know, our 24-hour day is made up of time with loved ones or friends, but a lot of it is at work. And anything that is going to really support us to be the best version of ourselves, both in work and outside of work, has got to be a win for employers and also part of their employee value proposition. You know, I'll treat you as a person, not just as a worker. And the other thing that I thought about the kind of whole MAP process and dealing with trauma is it's an opportunity, particularly for HR professionals, to think about performance, managing performance in a completely different way. Because as you said, people show up, they've got all their stuff with them, it impacts on their behavior, on the way they are with other people, and that is inevitable, and that will go on for time immemorial, won't it? So anything we can do that supports individuals to show up in their best light is going to be really key thing for the future. That's what I think anyway.
No, and I love that you said that because I know from my experience of using this holistic modality, which is called MAP, as part of our treating trauma program, is where we've got somebody who isn't performing, raises the question of, is this a competence problem? Is it a question of competence? Or is mental health impacting performance? And I remember having a conversation with a sales director who was feeling lots and lots of angst about not meeting their target, it being kind of, you know, a challenge in their industry at the time. And they were very much banking on a particular commission bonus and feeling all of this anxiety, fear, worry, doubt. Now, from the outside looking in, you could say, well, is that about their performance as a sales director in the way that they're getting the rest of the team to perform? Or is this something else? And actually, by attending the Treating Trauma pilot, they left feeling calm, they left feeling self-assured, they left feeling like, oh, this is yeah, it's just the way that I'm thinking and I'm perceiving and I'm believing that's impacting my performance. And they were able to message me a couple of weeks later and went, you'll never guess what. And I'm like, I bet I can guess what. And so it's, for me, the excitement is how we can use the Treating Trauma program to impact performance in a way that traditional schemes just don't have the ability to do that with such rapid results. But from your experience, can you see that?
Absolutely. And as you were talking, Sarah, I was thinking, you know, performance with a big P. And that could be team dynamics and cultural issues that are going on within teams. I think about grievances. I think about employee relations cases. I think about competency. I think about the fact that so many people are carers and have caring responsibilities, got parents. You've got women dealing with the menopause and trying to educate other people about the menopause. I mean, it's a busy life, right? It's a busy world and there's a lot going on. And probably our traditional approach is to do a policy or a process for each and every one of them, isn't it? Whereas actually, what you're proposing here is something more holistic, that it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, but it's not really about what the actual situation is. It's about how you're responding to it and getting people into a better frame of mind, more thoughtful frame of mind, calmer and better able to deal with all these hundreds of things that are going on around us, which
Yeah.
inevitably will impact on better performance.
Undoubtedly, undoubtedly, and we're seeing that. And it's that holistic mind-body approach that, the Treating Trauma program has seen people turn around chronic fatigue, turn around pain, illness. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. And I'm just so excited for people to experience it. So thank you so, so much for coming on. If you had anybody in the world of well-being and human resources that were wondering about even trying one of our pilot sessions, what would you say to them?
Well, my immediate response is go for it, obviously. But I completely understand that most companies have to make evidence-based decisions. And I would be get in touch with Sarah, organize a pilot, a trial, a taster. That's obviously in Zara's remit, and give it a go and see for yourself, and do it with enough people that you can get different perspectives on people. Because seeing is believing, really.
What a wonderful way to finish. Seeing is absolutely believing. Thank you so much, Cathy. And if you are watching this, please do get in touch, info@the Mind Solution, to arrange your pilot of treating trauma the easy way so that you can see and believe for yourself. Many thanks.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.